line. The further she can misalign her center line from mine, the closer to an escape she is. Right now, I have a strong chest to back connection. My center line, the center of my body, aligns with her center line. If she falls to a given side, and she misaligns her center line, the further her center of her body moves away from mine, the closer she is to an escape. If she can rotate 180 degrees and align our center lines chest to chest, now obviously she's completely escaped in most cases, provided she can get her elbow from one side of the center line back to the other. Okay? If her center line is aligned with mine, but she has two elbows on the same side of my body, she still has an escape. I can start to switch my hips and make adjustments to recapture her back. But provided she can spin inside my guard, inside my legs, and get two elbows on either side of my body, obviously she's escaped from there. So first and foremost, we have to maintain a chest to back connection with preferably having our center lines aligned with our partners. We have to play a dilemma and trilemma based game. We're constantly putting pressure on our partner's neck via a strangle. So she has defensive hands in place. What you can't have is extended amounts of time where your partner's not worried about getting strangled and just worried about escaping. If you're just focused on holding your partner and she's just focused on escaping, it's going to become very tiring for you and your partner's going to eventually escape most likely. What I need is to be putting constant pressure on my partner where I'm fighting to get my hands to top hand position so I can go and attack my partner's neck. If I can constantly get hands at least to here, your partner's no longer worried about escaping. Your partner's only worried about taking her hands and pulling my hands down defensively to reset her defensive hands. Okay? You have to understand that if you look at EBI overtime, people are just concerned with holding on to their partner. They feel if they start to unlock their hands and go for attacks on their partners, that because their hands are unlocked, it gives their partner a greater chance of escape. Now, we know this is not true because the control comes from your elbows. If you can have good control of your elbows, it's okay to have your hands unlocked and go in for attacks on your partner. You can't fall into the trap of your hands creating an illusion that you think that just because your hands are locked, you're doing something good. Just because your hands are locked doesn't mean anything. Now, my partner has defensive hands in place. She feels no danger of any kind, and she can focus on going into escapes. You have to be able to control your partner with your elbows and have the confidence to unlock your hands to be able to fight through your partner's defensive hand. So as she's going to escape, she's going to take my hook out with her hand, for example. If I control her primary defensive hand, now when she goes to reach down for my hook, hand comes across the neck. Now she has a choice. She can either peel my hook off, and now my strangle comes in and she gets finished, or she takes her secondary hand up and she controls my hand and pulls my hand back down. So that gives me a few extra seconds now to either lock a body triangle, or if my hook does come out, to reinsert my hook, where now she goes to pull my hand down, I can easily reinsert my hook. If I have a hook out, and now there's no threat of a strangle, and she has her hands not even on my hands, now when I go to put a hook in, she goes to stop me, it's hard, because there's no threat. I'm not threatening to my partner. But the second I start to threaten my partner, now things change. Now her hands come up defensively, she's worried about this mentally, and now physically, it's easier to put a hook in place. Okay? So we're always creating a game where we're looking to expose attacks on our partner's neck. And there are many ways that we can do this. We're always looking to create a dilemma game where if I get a hand across my partner's neck, she pulls the hand down. Now I'm always looking to come in and trap my partner's hands, for example. Now she's going to try to go into an escape. Both of her hands are trapped, and now I can start to work into my offensive game where I can actually put legitimate pressure on my partner through strangulations and go into getting our wins from here. Okay, but you can't be forced into a situation where you think that just because your hands are locked, you have good control of your partner. Now she's only focused on the escape, and it turns into a disaster where you're just squeezing your partner without really threatening her, and now she starts working towards getting out. You always have to be constantly attacking your partner's neck. So as she's trying to escape, I'm always going in, I'm punching hands down, I'm trapping my partner's hands, I'm always getting a position where I can put pressure on my partner, where she has to think about not getting finished rather than escaping back. So we've talked about conceptually what we're looking for. We're looking to keep our center lines aligned with our partner's center line with a chest to back connection. And we're looking to always put pressure on our partner's neck through the thread of a strangle, so she's worried about not escaping the position, but just not getting finished. Okay. Now, more specifically, let's talk about grip fighting. While there is a natural asymmetry in our partner's body, where she's very poorly equipped to handle me attacking her from behind, you have to remember that if you're dealing with an equally skilled or more skilled opponent than you're fighting with one of your offensive hands versus two of your partner's defensive hands and your partner's jaw. So it's one of your offenses versus three of your partner's defenses. And there's nothing more frustrating than getting to the best spot in the sport on your partner's back and feeling like you can't finish anybody from there. Okay? So what are the best grip fighting sequences, not sequences per se, but best grip fighting series where we can end up when attacking from here? My partner has two defensive hands in place. Right now, she's working with a 2 versus 1. This is not good for me. She has two of her defensive hands versus one of my offensive hands. This is the worst case scenario where your partner is very safe from here. Okay. What I'm looking to do is to get to a 1 versus 1, or even better, a 1 versus none situation. If I can sit to the overhook side, like so, if I can trap one of my partner's hands, now I'm working with a 1 versus 1 situation, where now it's one of her offensive hands or one of her defensive hands versus one of my offensive hands. So now when she goes to use her secondary hand to reach down and control my hands, it's much easier for me to get past this second hand. And now when she goes to use the opposite hand to stop me, it's trapped. So now we can go in and get through to break through and get a win. That's a 1 versus 1, where I trap one of my partner's defensive hands, but she still has one of her hands to work. The best offensive position of all is to have a 1 versus none situation, where it's one of my offensive hands versus 0 of my partner's defensive hands. Where now, when she goes to go in and use her 2 defensive hands to defend, one of them's trapped by my legs, one of them's trapped by my arms, and now, when she goes to use her jaw to defend, it's just the jaw, and you can usually pretty easily get a breakthrough and use one of your offensive hands to just break through only the defense of your partner's jaw, and now we can go in and get to a win pretty easily. Okay, so the worst case scenario, your partner has a 2 versus 1. This is no good. A little bit better is we have a 1 versus 1, where one of your partner's hands are trapped, but she has one defensive hand in place. And the best of all for us is a 1 versus none, where we peel both of our partner's defensive hands off, trap them in various ways, and now we can use one of our offensive hands to break through and get to a win with a 1 versus none situation. Okay, so conceptually, we're always looking to keep our center lines aligned, chest to back, and always be able to put pressure on our partner through the threat of a finish. Okay, so that's not really something that I'm going to teach technically when your partner goes to escape, but just being in the mindset of always attacking your partner's neck to make them worry about getting finished rather than worry about escaping. And more specifically, we're looking to always get to a 1 versus 1 situation, where it's one of our offensive hands versus one of our partner's defensive hands, or even better, 1 versus none, where it's one of our offensive hands versus 0 of your partner's defensive hands. Let's talk about defensive hand fighting now. Okay, when my partner's going in and looking to defend and eventually escape, we must be able to know what she's trying to do to be able to attack offensively. In order to attack offensively, we have to understand what our partner's trying to do defensively so we can counter it. By far, the most effective way to defend defensively from a strangle is to have one primary defensive hand and one secondary defensive hand. Okay, my partner's primary, we'll talk more about this later, my partner's primary hand will have a thumb stealing the inside position relative to my wrist, like so. My partner's secondary hand will be fingers over the forearm, where now, when I go to strangle my partner and she makes a strong body, it's very, very difficult. Her goal is to keep my strangle hand as close to her hips as possible. Okay, specifically the diagonal hip down by the down over to the right here. The closer my strangle hand can drift towards my partner's far shoulder, the left shoulder, the worse it is for her. Okay, if I can get my hand up all the way up past the neck and connected to the back of the traps here, it's very, very bad for her. Okay? So her goal is always going to be to put 2 defensive hands in and to pull my hand down to the far hip. So when I go to fight my hand up, now not only one is it hard for me to get a strangle in place, but it separates my hands from my chest and gives her a wider circle to a larger circle to escape her head and shoulders. Okay? If my hands are up here, I'm controlling my partner. I have good tight elbows, and my hands are very close to my chest. So I close the circle around my partner's body. So now when she goes to move around, it's difficult. But if she can pull my hands down here, now she can start to slide her right shoulder through. She can pop her arm through. So now I have double underhooks with a rear chest lock, and you just feel like now you can't even finish your partner. Your partner has a lot more situations where she can move around and try to go into escapes. And so I want my hand coming up towards the shoulder. She wants it going down towards the hips. Okay. Now she has 2 ways that she can escape. She can beat me at the head and shoulders first, or she can beat me at the hips first. Okay. So for example, she can misalign her center line, fall to the underhook side, and she can take my right hand up and over the head and free the head and shoulders first. Then the hips come free, and now she's gone. We can fall to the underhook side. She can beat the head and shoulders first. She can misalign the center line, and now she's free. You can fall to either side. She steps over a hook, frees the hips first, frees the head and shoulders second, and now she's free. Okay? So any time that she can misalign our center lines and disrupt my strong chest to back connection, she's looking at a good way to go to her escapes. Okay? So she wants to win the battle for hand positioning, making sure that her 2 hands stay on top of my hand, and that she pulls my hand down towards the hip. If at any point I can get my hands above her hand and win the battle for top hand position, now I'm winning this battle. But if she can keep her 2 hands over top of my hand, and she can win the battle for top hand positioning, but she pulls my hand down now because she has 2 of her hands on top, it's impossible for me to strangle her. But if I can strip grips off and get my hands at top hand positioning, now I can win. If she can misalign her center line from mine,